Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. So this week's case study is on a male client of mine actually. Usually they have been all on female, so I thought I'd better even up the odds and make sure that I include my male clients. So Joey's been working with me for about 20 weeks so far. He's got a really cool backstory. Joey actually used to be a baseball player. And he got to about the age of 18 where he needed to kind of go off and decide whether he wanted to do sport for a career or get some kind of academic background. And he ended up going with the academics. And during that time, he kind of found a bit of a passion for weightlifting. So in 2014 and 2016, Joey competed for the natural bodybuilding associations. And did quite well, but didn't get to the kind of physique that he was really searching for. So after that period, not only did he continue to go on and further his education and do an MBA, actually right here in Tampa, Florida, at the University of Tampa, he also then kind of went on to kind of further developing his body composition during that time. So from 2018 and 2019, Joey explained to me that he did quite a bit of cutting followed by bulking, but each time he would do the bulk, he would end up going too aggressively and really overdoing it, getting his body fat a little bit too high, and he couldn't quite find the right balance. So it wasn't until 2020 he actually reached out to me. He had followed me for quite a while, as well as Lane, and wanted to get some expert advice for how to actually go about doing a proper cut and then hopefully reverse him to a point where he can actually undertake a bodybuilding show again in the very near future. So you can see on the screen here a picture of Joey's starting body composition. So he's looking pretty good, if I'm being honest. He was probably around about maybe just under 20% body fat when he started. We didn't have exact measures. I wish that we did. Having a baseline body fat percentage is super helpful because over the time that you do the diet, you can kind of check in and whether or not the actual measurement that you get, whether it be from a DEXA, an ultrasound, skin calipers, in-body, whatever the method that you choose, whilst none of them are exactly perfect, usually you can see the relative change for you over the course of time, provided you are being consistent with the time and the conditions under which you take that body fat measurement. So he's certainly made some progress. So you can see this is his second front-on image that I'm showing you on the screen now. And then we've got a rear-facing shot as well. So let me bring that one up for you. So this is his rear-facing shot when he first started. So I'll pull up Joey's, outline or proposal, for when we started working together. So he wanted to compete at the end of 2021. That was his goal. He'd like to get back on stage as a natural bodybuilder, or even potentially move into the IFBB and, try his luck in the untested federations. So you can see here he came to me in November of last year. We set him up on a relatively modest approach to fat loss. So somewhere between 0.6 and 0.8% of his body weight was his target weekly rate of loss. Now, we know that weight loss is never perfectly linear. Usually it takes place in a bit of a step-like fashion. So some weeks he'll get an aggressive weight loss. Other weeks it's not so aggressive. And for some people, it may even be that it flatlines for a bit and then all of a sudden we'll see a bit of a weight drop. So that was kind of the proposed outline for Joey. And because his body fat was a little bit higher than what he would like at the beginning, I kind of said to him, we could implement some diet breaks or some periods at maintenance early on if you wanted to. But because you do have a slightly higher body fat at the moment, as far as the ability for diet breaks to attenuate, loss of lean body mass, is it really that important at the beginning of the diet when you have some, extra adipose tissue there? Probably not that much benefit because he's got those fat reserves to kind of protect him and his lean body mass, during that particular time. However, as you get to the end of a fat loss phase where you don't have as much adipose tissue, you don't have as much fat available, now there's less caloric cushioning during that deficit to protect your lean body mass. then I think that it's probably worthwhile adding in those diet breaks to help attenuate that loss of lean tissue. And not to mention some of the small decreases that we see in your resting metabolic rate as well. So you'll notice here for the first 16 weeks, we chose not to do any diet breaks. We were doing calorie cycling, and you can see if you come over to the side of the column here I'm pointing to, there's quite a few weeks where we do calorie cycling, and that's indicated with a yes or a Y, where he's done maybe 5 days on lower, more challenging macros, but then he has 2 higher days, whether that was to facilitate a more challenging workout that he knew he was going to be doing, or whether there was some kind of a social engagement that really helped him kind of stay motivated and stay on track. So he actually felt great for most of this, the first 15 weeks. He didn't really report having low energy. His mood was generally pretty good, but it has actually continued to get better the further into the fat loss phase we have gone. So you can see he started at 169.4, and he's been pretty on track every single week. So a 0.6% of his body weight at 169.4 is about just over 1 pound of weight loss per week. So he does that perfectly almost every week. You can see there's actually a couple of weeks here where he exceeds that significantly. So, and that's because he kind of underate his calories. You can see here he wasn't quite at 100%, and there's actually a week down here where he only reaches 92% of his targets. But overall, we're kind of down to about 17.6 pounds, which is excellent. He's really hasn't skipped a beat. He's done a really great job overall at actually hitting his targets. So at week 17, we kind of talked about, how much further do we want to take this fat loss phase? How are you feeling? How's your training been going? How's your recovery? How's your sleep? How's your mood? There are so many variables that you need to consider when you're undergoing a fat loss phase, and to decide, how much is this worth to me? Is it significantly impeding my life in other areas? So for someone that's not actually getting on stage, those are some really important questions I think that you need to ask yourself to determine, how much more pushing, how much more of a deficit do you want to create before it's perhaps time to change up the gears a little bit and hit the reverse diet mode, or even the muscle gain mode, if you know that there's areas that you still need to improve on. So we got to about week 17 here, and he was looking pretty good, and he's feeling really happy with his progress, but his energy levels were starting to get a little bit lower. So we took a diet break, and you can see here I've taken his calories back from 2490 back up to 2615. So it's not a significant increase, and I probably could have been more aggressive with those calorie increases, because he did actually continue to go on and lose another 0.8 pounds. I will say that on this particular week, we actually took his training right back too. So you'll see at week 14, we had just started to introduce some high intensity interval training. So for the first, how many weeks is this? 12 weeks, no HIIT training, nada. Just a little bit of lifts. So he'd get on the treadmill and do some walking. You can see we start to increase it up to 60 minutes. And then we start to add in some high intensity intervals. But on this particular week where we took him back to his maintenance, we also took out a fair chunk of energy expenditure from his HIIT training too. So that's another reason why I didn't take his calories back up too high, because some of that deficit or the energy balance was coming back up by me removing some of that intense cardio. So could have been more aggressive here, but he came out of that week feeling excellent. So we dropped him back in for these final 2 weeks of fat loss. We kind of had thought, maybe this will be the last 2 weeks that we go for it. He dropped down to 151.8, so starting to get pretty damn lean here. And he said, no, you know what, I'm feeling good. I think let's take a diet break this week, and then we'll come back, do 2 more weeks, and that'll take us to 22 weeks in total, with 2 diet breaks thrown in there. So he probably will get down to about 150 dead by the time we end this fat loss phase. So you can see what his calories kind of started at, and these are all based off, information that we provide you guys in the Complete Contest Prep Guide. So we literally have a step-by-step guide that explains not only the education and the science behind how and why we do this, but also how to make adjustments each week. So you can see that I've constantly made changes, or sometimes I've made changes, other times I haven't. And in the book, we explain exactly why we're making those changes and why we may not have made changes, depending on the actual result that you achieve each week. And all those things are kind of based on your compliance to your calories, compliance to your protein, compliance to your training, both HIIT, lists, and your general day-to-day step count, activity, those types of things. So, like I said at the beginning, we started off with absolutely no HIIT cardio, and then we've just started to gradually introduce that and increase it towards these final few weeks when I don't have quite as much flexibility with his calories, so I don't have as many calories to take from. We know that in order to actually get a change in weight, I need to make sure that I'm making a significant enough decrease in calories to actually have a result for the body and the metabolism to go, oh shit, I need to actually change and lose weight here. And if you don't do that, if I just made a small change, say under 10% of his current calories, then there's a very real chance that his metabolism will just adapt to that and there will be no change. And the same kind of thing happens in the reverse situation where you are reverse dieting and you're increasing calories. You don't want to go so high that the body's like, whoa, you've overfed me, I'm going to put on all this weight. Instead, you want to do a small calorie increase so that the metabolism has time to adapt to those new calories. So I am super excited to see where Joey ends up. Overall, he kind of started at 3,200 calories. We're down to 2,600, or we've been to 2,300. So just on 1,000 calories is what it's taken me to reduce his intakes by overall to get this 17.5 pound weight drop so far. Often I will see people go far too aggressive too early. And let's just say, hypothetically, he was 3,200 as his maintenance when he came to me, and I took him straight down to 2,300. So 1,000 calories straight off the bat. There's a very real chance that maybe for the first 4 weeks, he will have lost weight, and probably a significant amount at that. But what may have happened is his metabolism will have ended up adapting to those calories, and he probably wouldn't have gotten the same kind of progress. Instead, it would have required an even bigger calorie deficit, so probably somewhere into the 1900s by now, to have achieved the same kind of weight loss. So again, I think it's important to realize that you don't have to make a change every week. And a perfect example of that is for these 4 weeks here in a row. So I took him from 3,100 down to 3,096. So almost, it's actually under 10%, but he was losing at quite a significant rate here. You can see his weight was dropping 168, 167, 165, and there was no evidence that it was slowing down. So in his actual client tracking sheet, which I'll show you very briefly, so there's a lot of data here. So he records all of his macros. So this column is his protein, carbs and fats, fiber, his resistance training, his HIIT cardio, his lists, and then his weight. So at that particular point in time, we could see a trend for his weight just continuing to move in that downwards direction. It didn't look to plateau at all. So in that situation, I didn't need to make any adjustments to his actual calories because he was still losing weight. And that is something that I see happen quite a bit with inexperienced coaches. They'll just keep taking, and there's completely no need to do that. So that's one of the things that I wanted to pull up and talk about, I guess, when it comes to fat loss. Of course, making sure that the change is significant enough to actually result in a change. Sometimes people will go the other way and they'll just make a really small adjustment and nothing happens. And that's because the metabolism is just adapting to those calorie changes. It wasn't significant enough to cause an actual fat loss. And same for cardio. I often see people, reintroduce HIIT workouts from the get-go. And again, I like to use those as tools up my sleeve for later down into the contest prep when there isn't a lot of flexibility left with the diet to continue making those kind of rapid or aggressive calorie reductions. So instead, rather than making a big change to the diet and the nutritional intakes, which can become really challenging, instead we'll create that deficit by adding in some more high intensity exercise. And what we tend to see is if you introduce HIIT training early into the workouts and into your fat loss, again, we have an adaptive response to training. So if you start doing really hard, high intensity, really demanding HIIT workouts at the very beginning, your fitness, your cardiovascular health is going to improve very quickly. We know that happens with athletes. So what we'll end up seeing is that you'll adapt to that. And now, in order to create a greater energy spend, you need to do more and you need to go harder. And that intensity only continues to increase in order for you to keep having, greater calorie burn from that exercise. So the longer you can kind of keep that out of your training and still get results, then that's great. Don't put it in intentionally at the beginning. Just see what you can achieve just with a modification to your diet first, rather than going full blown, throw everything in at the very beginning. And same thing for your low intensity steady state. Another problem that I'll often see is that people will end up doing hours and hours and hours and hours of walking and cardio. I mean, hands up if you've been somebody that's been prescribed, 70 minutes, 80 minutes, up to 120 minutes every day during a contest prep of just walking. I don't really encourage that. Again, we have an adaptive response to exercise. And if you've been doing it for a while, and maybe even pre-contest in your off season, it's just something you've always done, you get pretty damn good and efficient at that particular movement. So by adding in more cardio in the form of walking, or maybe bike riding, whatever it is that you do, if you've been doing it for a while, you're going to be pretty good at it and very efficient. So by adding more, you're probably not going to get that many more calories burned from that modality of exercise. So sometimes it can actually be really helpful to change up the modality of cardio that you're using so that your body is less efficient at that movement. To be like me going for, my walks, it's so easy. Walking is easy for me. I can do it with my eyes closed. I burn no calories doing it. But if you get me to do like a full body HIIT workout with kettlebells and battle ropes and all those kinds of things, I'm going to be pretty puffed out and stuffed at the end because it's something I haven't been doing and I don't have that level of fitness. So I think it's important to remember that just changing the modality, starting off light, increasing the intensity and the difficulty as you progress through your fat loss is also super important. So we'll have a look at Joey's finishing photos now. He's almost at the end. So here's Joey's side-on shot. So he's down 17.5 pounds at this point. And again, I think he'll probably have another 2 or so pounds to go just for this practice run diet. This is not for him to get onto stage. It's for us to kind of identify what he looks like when he gets lean. Where are his weaknesses? What does he need to build? What does he need to grow? And then for the next 6 months or so, that's what Joey and I are going to be working on. We'll probably reverse diet him or even put him through a gain phase. The difference between those two things is subtle, but there is a difference. For a reverse diet, there's no expectation for a weight gain. It's let's try and increase calories with the intention of repairing and recovering your metabolism. Whereas when we do an intentional muscle gain, every week there is an expectation for you to gain a certain amount of body weight. And you can do that through an aggressive approach or a conservative approach as well. But there's always an expectation or an outcome that needs to be met each week. So that's the difference between a reverse and a muscle gain phase. So now having a look at his front on. So he's looking very lean. He's starting to lean out through his core as well. So I think looking at Joey's pictures at the moment, I think depending on what federation and what category he's going to do, if he's going to do bodybuilding again, we absolutely need to work on the size of Joey's quads and his legs. We probably need to work on some shoulder work as well. And I think just getting him eating back into surplus again, that's going to be, doing wonders. He has a great amount of size in his off season here. So I think that if we do diet him down for a show in late 2021 or even in 2022 season, we probably will implement some diet breaks to help mitigate any lightness or any potential loss of lean body mass. It will happen. There's definitely going to be some loss of lean tissue when you diet. It's almost something that you can it's almost unavoidable, particularly as you get very lean. So I guess the best thing we can do is implement those diet breaks. Make sure that he is training effectively, not doing too much cardio, which can impair his recovery, and make sure that all of the other variables that kind of go into play when it comes to dieting are under as much control as we can. So he's looking really good. But I'm super excited to kind of see what the end will be like for him once we've had another full, 6 months or more to work on improving. And then we'll diet him back down and see what he's got. So he's looking excellent. So great job to Joey so far. He's doing really well. Super positive guy. I've really enjoyed working with him. Now, if you are somebody that is wanting to go about a diet process and you are looking for one-on-one coaching, you can always get in touch with our team here at Team BioLane. We have 7 coaches who do a fantastic job with all individuals, not necessarily competitors. We work with Gen Pop as well, so I don't feel like, I'm not competing, I'm not getting on stage, maybe it's not for me. Garbage. We work with everybody, and we want to make sure that we can kind of go through that process and educate you along the way as well. There's plenty of option for you to ask questions, to increase your knowledge and understanding of how that whole process works. And as I mentioned, we've got our books, so if you are interested in doing this on your own and learning more, go and check out the links in the description below. There's the Complete Contest Prep Guide, Fat Loss Forever, the Complete Reverse Dieting Guide, and then a whole host of other books and recipes to kind of help you stay on track. If you're not subscribed to my channel, please give that a big old subscribe tick, and thanks so much for watching.